Because
Sean, you don't.
Because we start talking about different materials and we start throwing back and forth, and then you'll hear us say like FDM and SLA and all this other stuff. So I just want to make sure that people understand what we're saying. So your typical $300 printer you can find online now, like the Ender 3 or whatever, or the Net 8 that catches fire, is what they call an FDM printer, which is basically a reverse glue gun. So they basically melt plastic at the top, layer, whatever, and it comes out of a spool of plastic. So it's fuel, was it fused? Whatever.
Displacement bad.
Yeah, so that's the one that you can print plastic going up. That's BB8, 98% right there. They have it out now that's getting more obtainable is what they call SLA printers, which is a vat of resin, which is liquid, and either a laser or people are using their phone screen that basically flashes an image and it shows the resin as it goes up. So that is the new technology that's out there is the SLA printer. But most of the ones that like your handheld ones are your hobby printers that are $300-something, except for the photon and stuff that's in the SLA side is going to be FDM.
That FDM is, it looks like a roll of, it's the filament one. Looks like a
weed whacker one.
Yeah, the weed whacker one.
Which people have tried.
Oh yeah. Alright, so, what we're going to do.
Well, Yasu's got what, at least.
He owns part of Beam, the company called
And Beam is the one that he's getting a more affordable SLA printer.
I think the SLA we bought was like $300 for us. It was like $300 for SLA. You want one?
Yeah, kind of.
$400. $400.
There's a lot of Kitt parts that I want that goes for him and I'm an SLA printer.
Never mind, we'll get into that after.
We'll talk later.
Yeah, so what we're going to do today is we're going to try and introduce you to what 3D printing can do for you as a cosplayer to help you out. We don't want to get so much into the technical side because that's a whole different panel. What we like to do is just touch on things you can do, things you can make. But one of the big things we really want you to take away from this whole panel is 3D printing is not the end of the body.
Thank you.
Okay? 3D printing will get you to a point, but you still have to finish. We're going to floor you right now. How much print time do you have in BBA?
Versus including drive or not drive?
No, just the printing. This is just the printing.
Including drive?
Okay, all right, including drive time.
He's probably 400 plus easy.
Okay, now how much time do you have in finishing BBA?
Maybe we'll go that direction. Which that's probably about like almost another 400 just sanding, priming, painting, film.
Waffles here, that's his name is Waffles. Waffles here is, I think that's one of Sean's files that we're going to eventually make a helmet out of. Waffles is probably over 150 hours in finishing time, just to get him to this point. So what we're trying to say is, a saying that Yasu came up with I really like is that 3D printing is a force multiplier. So you can have something like an armor or gauntlet piece, throw it on your printer, and go do something else. Do your undergarment, do another piece of armor, do this. So while that's printing, you can do this. And then when you get done with that, throw something else on the printer, and then go to that. So it's a force multiplier.
You don't want to kind of say it's like slave labor, but it's basically a slave shop, and you can tell them to do something, they don't talk back or anything else.
Yeah.
Back, and there should be a part that should be. Question.
Either that or you get what's called 3D art, which is, so I really want to do that's 3D art.
Oh.
There's a guy that actually, the bird's nest. There's actually a guy now that does that intentionally and resins it, puts a light in it, and sells it for art. And makes a killing off it. So, all right, so my name again is Rob. I'm with the New Arizona Republic Fallout Group, the obnoxious ones that are in the middle of the gaming floor. This is Brad. He's from Fire Team Phoenix.
Halo and video game cosplay.
This is Kitt. He's with the Fallout Group also. We also have a fourth person. Her name is Samantha. She's with Thermal Cosplayer. She's the one you really want to know because she does finishing work. And she does really, really good finishing. I'm not gonna tell you, huh? Yeah, she'll be here in a little bit. I'm not gonna give this guy's name to you, other than it's John, because he's my source. Nobody else gets it. So I keep him very happy.
As you can tell, because he doesn't want to sing.
Exactly. I can't sing. I don't want to sing. Shush.
He's a mere shiny ball. I don't know.
We've known each other. Actually, Brad's group is the one that
Got him into actually playing.
Yeah, doing
With all his
this.
printers.
Yeah, exactly. So again, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start, we'll kind of explain who we are, our experience, and then what printers we have, what we're using, what we're doing. And then after that, it's kind of a free-for-all.
Yeah, it's kind of easier to field questions than trying to just.
Yeah, and say, this is a 3D printer, and this is PLA, and this is it. So, my name again for the 15th time, because I'm really tired, is Rob. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 printers. And I now have an SLA printer. So I'm up to 5. John has my SLA because I keep him happy. I've been doing this. And there's Samantha. Samantha's our finisher.
He's with you in the finishing stuff?
No, finishes stuff. No, not a finisher. Yeah, and she's bad. She's a Fallout Pikachu, and she's a little psychotic.
I think if you have a 3D printer, you gotta start doing something.
Yeah, 3D printers will drive you insane. But they're cool.
The joke I have between us is have a friend that has a 3D printer.
Exactly.
Because you don't want a 3D printer. Because they are amazing tools when they work right, but when they don't, you're gonna throw them through a wall.
Oh yeah.
See, I started 3D modeling before 3D printers were considered cool.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
I saw them when they were like 3D printers for whole rooms. That's when I started using them. They were whole rooms.
Now, what you did in that whole room, I did this off Ender 3, and the bed is literally this big. And then parts. So Samantha, she's from Tucson Cosplay. You already missed your question, so you're done. Have a nice day.
We're
No. So again, I've been doing this for a year and a half now, and I probably have, I don't know, 4,000 hours of print time. Matter of fact, at my house right now, North Tucson, I have 3 printers going with a last minute project that I got Alan's helmet, that I got the helmet on Tuesday, and I need to make a breather thing. So again,
And warning disclaimer, there's somebody monitoring his printers.
do not leave your printers going. Do not.
But that's why I like having filament everywhere.
No.
Exactly.
So there's actually, not the technical side, there's a thing called Octoprint. There's ways you can actually
Monitor
on your
I'll have
phone.
on mine.
Yeah, and you can like turn them on and turn it off. I'm not that smart. And if I try to program that in my printer, I will light my house on fire. And it will take the whole neighborhood out.
The reason why I say that is because especially now, there's ones you can buy for $300, $250. You'll see them on Amazon, like blowout sale or whatever, from like the Ender 3 or the Net 8 and stuff like that, which the technology now is open source, so everybody can use it. And that means everybody can manufacture it. That means you're gonna get your quality that goes. So you'll have ones that are, a Net 8 as an example is notorious for catching fire because their connectors aren't put together tight enough, or they're supposed to be a specific connector, but they're not, they're a knockoff. So when you're pulling, what is your bed? I have a 25 watt bed.
My A5's, I think 100.
Okay.
100 watts.
So when you're pulling that stuff through, which is basically a giant coil like a ceramic heater, and you have all that energy going through and it's not dissipating or it's bad connection, that's where people start lighting stuff on fire. Or they have connectors that melt out of nowhere.
Ventilation's also a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so doing with that is, I've got to a point where I have my 3 printers that are completely in one room. I have to be able to monitor them and take care of it like that way. But just realize once you start getting through, maintenance on your printer is a big thing.
Yeah.
Make sure your connectors are all good. Make sure your bed's not arcing or something like that. And so you don't have that thing. But once you get that and you're comfortable with it, you can actually go and like we do is like, I'll leave for a couple hours and come back and hopefully there's a print then.
Yeah, and it's not print 3D art.
Yeah, it's not broken on the ground.
Yeah, so again, this panel is, we kind of bounce a lot. So what we'll do is, the three mediums, might as well start with the three mediums that are used is, you'll hear is PLA, PETG, or everybody calls PETG, and ABS.
These are pretty solid ones.
Those are pretty solid ones. I use a lot of PLA. This is PLA, that's PLA.
He's PLA.
And PLA is your catch-all, your base filament. You can get it from $9 a roll on up. My suggestion is do not get the cheap PLA. Because cheap PLA will just gum up your machine and it will cause all kinds of heat and discontent.
I haven't had a problem with it. The thing with that is too is you got to figure out your manufacturer. The biggest thing with PLA or your filament is dimension accuracy. If you have certain printers that are like super tolerant on how big the filament goes, if it gets too big, it'll jam itself and then it won't go down the hole. Sorry, I'm trying to catch my voice back. The ones that are certain, like some I have on my running on my printers is an E3D hot end. They have a little bit better tolerances that I can accept out of spec a little bit. It's not like super, like if they're super dimension accurate, they're only going to fit in. So the ones I have will actually can take cheaper filaments that are not like super strict and still print it out. You're going to get, especially with your printing, I don't think anybody's got a really kind of rough printing right now.
I should recommend. I have a huge helmet that was made too large. Basically, I know 3D modeling, only this time I didn't actually 3D model, I trusted somebody else to do it. And so when I got this helmet, it's 3 times larger than my head. And my head fits in it just fine. But it's the problem too is when you print for the size and you have to break it up into pieces and attach it, there's certain sections that are so weak that they just crack. And it's been...
So essentially,
what I was trying to get on that is like dimension accuracy and within the type of filament. As long as you understand what you're going to be finishing it with, you might get spots or like what do you want to call it, like bubbles inside your print because it's not consistently filling exactly what it's supposed to, and that's where some of the cheaper filaments will be, or they'll have additives or not as clean plastic. So when it melts, it's like popping little air bubbles.
And you'll actually hear it pop.
And so like something like that is like, oh, I know this is not a super structured piece, that it's not going to support a whole bunch of weight. It's just kind of like a panel that goes on the outside of something. If I have a couple extra little holes I have to fill in with some spot putty or something like that, or finishing type thing, that's fine with me. But I'm like, if I'm saving, the way I'm printing stuff now is like I'm going through 5, 6, 7, 8 rolls every month.
Really? Dude, I'm like twice that.
Wow.
You're slacking.
I know, exactly. But like building new BB-8 parts or I'm building a 3D printed R2D2 from the ground up. So that where if I can find a cheaper print, like if I know I'm gonna be sanding these parts and taking care of like the finishing the exterior part finish on it, I'll go cheaper film. So just price it down a little.
Brad hit on a really good thing. So 3D printing, basically you're forcing the filament through what they call a hot end, which heats it up and goes through the nozzle, and then comes out into layer. He's using the E3?
E3D line. Okay. That's the thing I had to upgrade when I got my Robo.
So I'm using a micro Swiss, and a micro Swiss has a whole lot higher tolerance, or not?
Yeah, you don't have enough flex.
Yeah, there's not enough flex, so my filament has to be spot on, or else it'll just go. And Keith is using a micro Swiss hot end because, again, without getting into too much technical, it's all steel versus aluminum for the hot end, so it heats up the deal. It gives you a better consistency of his does too, but it gives you a better consistency of the layer. Now, essentially, what we're talking about also in layer height is finishing work. A lot of like the slicer programs are set up on a 0.2 or with the 0.2 layer,
which is what's your standard layer.
It's your standard layer. I don't do 0.2 because 0.2 leaves a lot of layers. You can actually see that if you ever see a print and you run your thumb across it, goes, you can actually feel it. That's the layer. I do it at 0.12. So,
Depends on what you're doing too.
Yeah.
I'm printing a full set of power armor, it'll be 7 feet tall, I'm getting stilts in it. For something like that, if I print it at a shallower height, it's gonna take a lot longer. And because it's so large, and I don't have to worry about real fine details, I can have, more, imperfections, and I can smooth that out in the finishing process. But something small like this 1911 here, this was 0.1 layer height, which is on the finer side of what people do. But I mean, on this, you've got like the engraving that says Colt and stuff on the side. I want to be able to see that. I wanted the checkering on the grip. It's going to take longer to print that, but if you want those fine little details, you're better off printing smaller heights.
You're looking something that would take an hour, could take 3 hours by doing it from point 2 to point 1.
Yeah, some of the R2 parts I'm doing actually in point 3.
Really?
Layer height.
That's
and they're still
huge, like.
and they're still pretty, like some of the parts I have are pretty 10 to 15 hours because they're decent sized chunks of R2. Oh, everybody's seen R2s, like they're almost like a single panel in one shot or half a panel in one shot.
The layer height can also affect the durability of the parts as well.
Yeah.
If you get too tall a layer, it's not as strong. So
It's
generally,
fluffy.
if you want strength, you want to keep it around that 1.15 to 2 area.
Yeah, 2's pretty solid. I mean, it's pretty much what it is. And a lot of things you start getting into your what do you call it? Your hardware of your printer. Is yours? You guys are on lead. Everybody's on lead screw, right?
Yeah, we're on lead screw.
Nobody's using that all thread anymore.
Oh, no.
Okay. When I first got into this stuff, they came out with, my Robo came out with what they call just basically all thread. Everybody seen like a giant piece of threaded rod, and that's what they were going up. So you would have to stick to like 0.2 or 0.4 or point something like that because the thread pitch on the stepper motors and the thread pitch on the all thread it would never really make a good half turn. You would always have to go up a full turn to get it up there and be solid, or else you're going to get vibration and stuff like that, which basically messes up the print.
Oh, yeah, you get the.
And so now
the
everybody,
higher it gets, the more wall.
yeah, and so now everybody's going, and luckily now is going to what they call a lead screw, which is a slow arc, but it's a thicker slow arc. So that your stepper motor that goes and says, okay, this is 1 step, this is 2 steps, this is 3 steps as you go, will actually bring it up consistently on that without having major layer lines.
Yeah.
And that's where, like the all thread, you could actually, first prints I've made, you can actually see and like hold it right up to the all thread.
Yeah.
And they'll
And you can see.
they're
You
like
can actually
exactly
see
as
where
it
it
goes
goes
up there on each individual layer.
So what Brad brought up a good point too. The taller so I have an S5, which is a 500 millimeter bed. I mean, I can print that full size helmet and then have room left over. Shut up. The higher it gets, even with the lead screw, don't even look. With that lead screw, the higher it gets, the more swallow you can have. Shut up.
You want to go into thermal properties of plastic in a
No,
second?
we're not yet. No. Well, we are here in a second. We'll get into finishing. So, again, if you're just getting into it and you don't have a 3D printer, the only thing I can say is buyer beware. Do your research. I like Creality because the Creality printers, I'm not advertising Creality at all. I've had really extremely good luck with Creality printers. I have 2 Ender 3s, 2 CR10Ss, and an S5 now. I've upgraded them all. That's the other thing beautiful about 3D printing. Your printer, now. The most expensive thing I ever bought for that thing was like $64, and it was a hot end. The stepper motors are what, $10, $12.
And that's where, when 3D printing, I would say not even 8 years ago at least, you had very few people that were in the market.
Yeah.
MakerBot was, when they first came out with it, was basically you got a kit that you built from the ground up, which was laser cut plywood.
Oh, good lord.
Hey, don't knock that, I still got one that works. Not the MakerBot, but the...
And it's not on fire?
No, my fair. No,
There's all kinds of horror stories.
so, when they came out, everything was proprietary. MakerBot actually went, as the company MakerBot went and started not openly sharing what they're doing. So they have their own proprietary hardware, proprietary software, and all that stuff. So you can't do this stuff like we used to. Now with them being open source and everything is, I can go online and buy a whole new control module for my robo that's out on our booth. It's actually printing right now. You can buy an Adreno Mega, $12. If you want to wait a little longer from China, you can get them down to $3 a pop, almost $3 or $4. So that stuff has been a really big game changer. Why you've seen a bloom in the market of 3D printing, because you're able to, everybody's equal to the same. Nothing's, I have to go from this exact company to get this one part. Things like that you can be able to take care of. And filament's gone down.
Yeah, filament's gone down. Unless you have sponsors. Sorry.
You have a sponsor?
Yeah, you have a sponsor. Who do you think? Never mind. That's my.
We're gonna have some talks later. Just
That's
wait
my
till we get outside.
secret project. But I'm also okay. So this is for you. I'm buying probably 20, 25 rolls a month of filament. And
That's you're doing the regular size.
yeah, I haven't.
1 kilo.
1 kilo. I haven't stepped up to those huge ones because I just don't have the room.
I don't know if you're voted, right?
Yeah, I'm voting right now.
Okay. Sorry, okay, that's another thing we're gonna go real quick.
Yeah, so yeah. This is where 3D printing can go really.
If anybody stops by our fire team booth, my Robo 3D is what they call a direct drive, which means the filament comes in the top, goes not even probably less than 1/4 of an inch into the hot end and starts going in and start getting melted. His bigger printers actually have the gear and the extruder that pushes it through a tube and then down again. So with his printers, you can't print really a lot of flexibles, can you?
Oh, I can run TPU like he's not qualified. So I'm going to succeed to Brad. The direct drives are much better. It's a much better because there's a lot of flex. And so what it is, so you have the reel, you have what they call an extruder, which is motor and which pushes the filament through a tube which goes into the hot end. The thing just goes right into the hot end. The problem with the Bowden, it's called Bowden tube that I have. The problem is if this stepper motor goes out or gets any kind of slippage and stuff, it won't push.
Yeah, because you're pushing
filament.
He's pushing it basically past it and then it goes inside. So it's not, and it's also dependent on your filament and what you're printing. It's not a consistent flow.
Yeah, it's not.
So if something like his tube gets kinked,
I'm done.
he's like, or something like in the print where it's trying to move it, it's kinking the thing, you might not have consistent flow going in. With mine, it pulls it from the spool straight into the thing. So if I only had it once get jammed up, but.
You can get direct for Bowden systems. You can get direct drive systems for them. I'm partial Bowden. I've had the only thing I really had with any problem with any of my printers was I've worn them out. I mean, I've worn stepper motors out.
That's the thing too. Is like I don't understand. I've had my the set of Robo printers I've had for at least 5 years now. No, I think I've only replaced I think is one Adreno Mega because it was telling me the ambient temperature.
So the reason why I haven't worn out the electric. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm making sure we're not going to cut everybody else's questions out here.
So
You want to stop?
You killed. So this is one thing. Okay, we'll get back on track because 3D printing is.
There's so many different ways.
It's a beast. It is.
It's a beast.
So you want to just go to the questions?
Well, yeah. Can we?
Because we could probably narrow a lot more things down if you guys ask questions you have.
Let me do it. Let's do the filament choices.
Gotcha.
And why you don't use ABS because it'll kill you.
The gas that it releases, you are.
Okay.
I understand that. I'm like, don't be like standing there.
So all right,
Most people don't know that they're not supposed to stand in the characters.
Start with PLA and we'll work.
Okay,
Yeah, start PLA.
So PLA is your entry level. It's the catch-all. Everybody does everything in PLA.
Polylactic acid.
Yeah, sure, okay.
Here.
The problem, yeah, this is PLA. That's PLA. That's PLA. The issue with PLA is if you do not prepare it right, in the Arizona sun, it will just destroy it. If you come to the Fallout display, we have a board and it's got the words Fallout on it. those letters sat outside for about 2 hours in July, and I did that intentionally to show what it would do. It'll warp all the.
So PLA does not have a thermal,
Yeah.
it's got a very low thermal property. Even when it's printed, it'll warp.
It's very similar to thermoplastics if you've ever used them before, like
Yeah.
a
Heat gun.
Warhol or a Sintra, something like that. It's similar to that where it'll just fall apart and not finish it correctly.
How would it act as a mold for something that is more resistant to?
I did not bring the helmet. Most of the helmets, if you come by our booth, most of the helmets there are actually molded off of 3D prints.
So I actually have a mold in our booth too.
Oh yeah. Oh, you got the cool one.
The two
Two
people.
pieces of
What is
part,
it?
that's not
So-
part.
Yep, it's a two-part mold.
So you've got the parent child basically.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can print your part
It's a two-part
with it with PLA. What I would suggest is really do your prep work, and then you can use the mold. As long as you don't use a lot of the thermal molds, the thermal molding. Hey, casting, do not do this if what you're using for your molds, to make the mold has thermal properties. Be really careful because you'll destroy.
The 3D print, yeah, you
Yeah.
have to prep it first. If it's something that you don't want, you want to prep it really fast, there's a product called Flex Bond that people typically use on foam. And it actually, 2 layers on PLA strengthens it enough to withstand the heat from a mold.
Yeah, that's the thing. The thermal property of PLA like this is that just regular fiberglass and resin that was in this, and then you see it like that, kicked off hot enough that it cracked all the
Yeah,
plastic.
the correct
Luckily I did the commando helmet that I have at our booth was done off of a 3D printed mold or 3D printed master and just regular silicone on top. So I had the silicone barrier that was probably at least a 1/4 inch thick or a 1/2 inch thick to prevent the freeform air kick on there.
What kind of
Because
silicone did you use behind here?
no, it just rebuffed it.
So what they're talking about is what everybody uses. 3D printing is a really good thing to make masters from, and then just dab at it. We have a guy in our group that actually does helmets. Actually, 2 guys now that do helmets, and I have been printing the 3D motor molds or the masters for. They've been molding them. That's what they do. Is they make a mold off the master, and then off they
Yeah,
go.
if you strengthen your master, you can use it over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Because
I probably
molds wear out. If you make a really good mold, you probably can get 25 to 30 passes. You're going to get to 15, depending on what you're using.
Okay, I see. 'Cause
I
mine-
use really, I use some weird shit. Let's put it that way. I like to use a lot of dyes and pigmentations, and those affect your mold.
Yeah, that's good. I was gonna say.
So,
Standard
anytime you
plastic.
use like a silicone pigment, it destroys molds.
Yeah, because it's got a silicone.
So we'll go to PETG or PETG, which the biggest
Soda
thing.
pop bottles.
Yeah, exactly. Soda pop bottles, your dashboard, your car is made of a PETG or a variety of PETG. It's the mix between PLA and ABS plastic, but you have the strength that PLA doesn't and the thermal properties, but you don't have the I'm going to kill you with ABS.
Well, in the rigidity, what I found, because when I do mechanical parts for BB-8, mechanical parts, like his panels are, those are PLA, those are stiffer than if I actually printed a comparable PETG plastic.
No,
PETG has a little bit of flex in it, so I'm trying it out as we put a panel and I can basically take my hand and bend it, and PLA's strong and solid. So that's why if you guys do pass by the part of the droid booth where like R2D2 and stuff there, there's some panels up there for BB-8 that's new. The new one, that's carbon fiber PETG. So it's PETG plastic as the base with carbon fiber kind of built into as a powder inside it. So it basically gives me the thermal properties of PETG, so it's not going to, if I leave it in the sun for 30 seconds out here, it's not going to, but he also has enough rigidity that he's not going to fall and squish.
So that's the other thing cool about 3D printing is the variety. I did PLA wood grain for a friend of mine that, what are those things, I can't remember, they're like in the corner of your doors and it's like more neat wood carving stuff. I made her for, I don't know, it's like fits in the doorway, it's in the corner. I whack my head on this stupid thing all the time. I don't know, so, but they're like shook, but they're.
That would explain a lot.
They're doorway pieces.
There you go, they're doorway pieces and they're pretty big. And the wood grain I got is PLA plastic with actual wood sawdust in it. And she actually sanded these things and stained them. And it looks like mahogany wood.
It's actually about 30% wood powder in it.
Yeah.
And it will take a stain.
Yep, baby group, everybody has baby group.
Yeah.
3D printers.
Good Lord, I have not done it.
Yeah, no,
I'm
wow,
not
I'm
doing
surprised.
it either. But there's also another friend of mine, costume of fortune, has gold. It's real gold filament that he's doing something for his daughter's wedding, and it's real gold. It's got real gold. It's
Gotta flex on the board people.
yeah. I was like, you're doing what? How much money do you have to waste?
And then if we go into filament stuff now, there's stuff that conducts electricity. You can make stuff that makes technically a 3D printed circuit now. Then you can actually put a light bulb on one end and a battery on the other end, and
I've
you can push
seen
it.
some of that actually control electronics.
That would be smart. They're also printing on clothing now.
Oh yeah, you can print it down. Yes, you can do that. It's the whole field is good.
And it's machine washable.
Oh yeah. So we have
Wow, not even 15 minutes, because you said 5:50.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, now we go
Back
back
to
to
the like PLA versus PET G. I've been using a lot of PET G lately because I'm printing power armor. The reasons why I'm using that, we're in something called layer separation. So if you X out these layers, the PET G, the layers stick together better, but it's printed at a higher temperature. I'm printing PLA at about 200 degrees centigrade, where the PET G is 250. That's about 400 to 500. That's 100 degrees difference. Because of that higher melting temperature, it's not susceptible to the sunlight, hot cars, that kind of stuff. Those layers do adhere better, but you can't just crank PLA up to 250 degrees. It'll be too wet. It won't hold, that kind of stuff. So
it actually it destroys.
actually, all of the fittings on this bazooka are PET G. I just did it because we've got some thinner parts. It's more durable, and that's what I had my machine loaded up with already because of the armor. So I did go ahead and print those in PET G. The disadvantages are it does cost a little bit more, a couple dollars a roll. That comes, that's per pound basically.
You're looking average 17 to 18 for PLA, to 22 to 24 for cut.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
kilo.
per kilo. It's a kilo. Yeah.
For us in the United States, it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, it's 2.
And if you start getting into 3D printing, Brandon,
Oh yeah.
you are going to convert over to metric no matter what. Because everything in a 3D printer is like metric based.
It's all metric based.
And then it's so.
Get you a good ruler that flips both sides. Like I have like 4 or 5
Or
colors.
just study a different language.
Yeah.
Or study a different language. Perfect.
Because a lot of it's everything's in 0.1 millimeter layer height. All your slicer software likes everything in metric because it's convertible. It's like 10, 20, 30, not 10.235 whatever. So that's a lot from that. Thermoplastics, he's going through PET Gs. PET Gs is in the middle because if you have ABS and you try to print ABS when it first came out, we had PLA ABS. You needed an enclosed printer because you need to make sure that part does not cool off. Because if the part cools off, and then your layers, like he was saying, will pull apart. You'll have like the part come apart. It won't bond parts.
ABS
And they're
is monster.
so finicky with ABS to a point that it was even, we found with one of my friend's printers that he had his consistent layer height separation and he didn't understand why. Because he had his AC in his house kit on, and just enough of a draft would make that one same layer go whoop.
ABS, okay, we're not saying don't use ABS, but if
It's
you,
faster than the other plastics, which is great if you need to make something super fast, but not for 3D printing.
and strong. It's, yeah, I mean, ABS is like plastic, it's plastic. Drawbacks, yeah, drawbacks is you have to have a completely enclosed printer. You have to have a ventilation system. It's very finicky to temperature control.
Like, I'm gonna put it this way, you have to have a ventilation system, because I've had friends' birds die from being exposed to the gas, and they've got more possible pneumonia from being exposed to the gas. So please have a ventilated area.
It's like lighting plastic on fire in your house.
Exactly what it is.
If you've ever done any kind of cosplay.
You lit plastic on fire?
Shush!
Plastic on fire, you just using it to bond each other together.
Shush!
So, with PLA, it's like, you can definitely tell if somebody printed it in ABS, like if I printed an ABS up in our booth, you can smell it probably all the way up the front.
Like, you're gonna be
It's gonna be a chemical smell. PLA, I tend to think smells like waffles because it's.
You can actually get PLA.
Good point.
Sure, people think about this
You
now.
can buy coffee PLA. I found coffee PLA. I found strawberry PLA. I found blueberry PLA, and it smells like coffee, strawberries. I'm like, okay. Yes, they are. So I thought.
This is Zen PLA.
So my sponsor, I was talking to him. I was like, "You guys have any of that coffee PLA?" After 5 minutes of them hysterically laughing on the phone, they sent me a sample. It smells just like coffee.
While it's printing or afterwards?
While it's printing, because it heats up and stuff like
You
that.
probably smell when you're sanding because you have to heat up your sand.
Yeah, listen, because
Anybody have any questions?
we could go on for hours and hours, but we want
What kind of
to.
software are you use to like create your prints?
Like just to send it to the printer or to actually like make it home?
That's something to print out.
So 3D model.
The model, are you talking modeling program or just like search program?
I've trained animator, because like I really have animation training, so I've been using Maya and Max, but there's also like 3D blenders, there's like ZBrush, there's things like that that you can use for free. So this is useful, but you need to be familiar with animation, like I'm not kidding you, because there is an animation book, specifically 3D animation, it will make modeling so much easier for you.
Yeah, I switched from, depending on what I'm building, I'll go from Fusion 360. If I have to do like a helmet or something that's a more rounded shape, Fusion 360 likes quarters and squares and whatever, like geometry. I've gone through Blender, which is
Fusion 360,
Fusion 360, depending on what you do.
it's free. You go to the Fusion 360 site, you can get it for free if you make more than $1,000 a month. You're not really a business, blah blah blah. You can get their base entry level, which is what do you use, Sean?
Actually, I use several. The Fusion 360, they've gone through a little license change the way they word it, but it kind of like defaults you into thinking you're going to have to pay for it, but then it's like, no, personal use.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fusion 360, Windows 10 has 3D Builder built into it.
Yeah.
And there's also, I don't know if you guys know, but I believe Autodesk still does this.
Oh, yeah.
You can get a student license for I think 1 to 3 years, and it's basically almost the whole system for free. And then after that's up, I mean, you
You're
need to
done.
pay,
Yeah.
but still do all your modeling in that year, and then be like, here, okay, done.
Or you just cheat like I do, keep them like, hey, can you do this for me?
That's what I was gonna say, I don't even do any 3D modeling myself. There's a lot of websites, Thingiverse.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you want to download or print, there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff out there.
All this stuff I have, I found that browser for free. Thingiverse one.
Yeah, if you're gonna get free ones, because I agree that Thingiverse is really good, but be careful because some people will post paid ones on free,
Oh,
and then
yeah.
you'll get in trouble when you thought it was free and it wasn't. So just kind of maybe like
That's a
find
big
that
thing.
file and then go on Google and search for the file and make sure it's actually free.
Anything Star Wars related?
Yeah. That's one reason why, like with stuff when we were building BB-8,
Yeah.
the outer part of him, Disney. You don't want to go.
Oh, no.
You don't want to go fight Disney.
No.
Inner part of it, we can get away with it because they don't have any electrical software against like the drive system or anything like that. But
You
you
can
start
start to check the reviews.
Yeah.
If nobody's reviewed it, it may not come out
And
the way
you-
it's supposed to.
you're gonna-
If there's a bunch of reviews, everybody seems happy, you're probably gonna have okay time printing. But some of them, there's one guy in particular for Fallout stuff, when I see his little icon there, I don't even bother because I know none of his prints are set up.
You'll get to, so your big 3D sites that I use are a site called Thingiverse, My Mini Factory, and there's a search engine called Yeggi 3D, Y-E-G-G-I 3D, which is basically a search engine. And then just go from there, drill down. There's literally millions of things found. Sean, this was your file? Or?
I modified it. The one I did from scratch, I actually did in mesh mixer.
Okay, mesh.
So that was from scratch in mesh mixer.
I do, no matter what you're gonna use a 3D printer for, if it's for designing something, building something, prototyping anything, you're gonna wanna get familiar with some type of 3D software. Because I can give you like this, and Sean, it might have been uploaded, that it's smaller than this.
Oh, yeah.
And so you're like, okay, I'm gonna print. Because that's what it is, but like, wait a second, that's not even scale anything. Or an armor, you're gonna have to scale it because my arm length is different than her arm length and his arm length.
Well, and some 3D printers only have like they have restrictions on file compatibility, so you also need to be familiar with how to convert these different files, and some 3D models can be converted to then go in and make adjustments even further. Because
Shell them up, make them thicker, because some of, like, a lot of things that are out right now is with Destiny, like video games, there are people able to get the rigged, or I don't want to call it rigged, but the software, or not the software, the models that have the rigging in them, so they can actually animate somebody's arm moving. But if you try to pull that into some type of 3D software, it's just like a sheet of paper. So like you try to print something like that, and it's like it's not going to happen. So you have to figure out how to pick it up, make it into a usable.
You're going to take it 2D and you're going to have to make it 3D.
essentially what you should do is you need to bring it first.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you
just
can unwrap the object and work from there.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So but you're gonna have to, no matter what printer you use or what you're doing, unless you're gonna do exactly off of these paid websites or these websites and just print exactly what they give you into the software, then you're gonna need to learn how to do some type of 3D modeling or manipulate a 3D model, scaling it, not scaling
That's why I
it,
said like
following
3D
it.
animation books, where you can just go to like some of the forums, you'll learn a lot from 3D things people literally want to know.
Yeah, that helmet is a free file. And I scaled it up, and all I did was, that was one of my first ones that I printed, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I basically took it and just blew it up and bought it for my head size. And, question?
Can you talk a bit about types of supports and also printers with 2 or more extruders?
I think the dual extruder thing has kind of gone and on its way. Because well, not necessarily that, it's because they're going to Joseph, like the Prusa, if you see that, they actually have instead of multiple heads, because when you have a multiple printer head, you have to have the software that makes that everything is offset where that other head is. So now they're actually coming in as like you have a row of filaments that will come in all into one and they come out the same nozzle, so you only have one tool path to have. So anytime you wanted to change for like some dissolvable supports or something like that, they actually go out and they make a waste block print out until they know that like 5 or 6 layers on this side or 5 or 6 passes on this side will purge the nozzle and then come back and then go back into your software. They used to have like dual printer heads and like that, but then you would always have that offset you had to deal with. So a lot of them now are just basically bringing it all in as one, like bring multiple materials in, but have it in the software to take care of it, or the software will be multicolored.
I have a friend with one that's can do up to, I think it's 5 filaments, 5 different colors on one head. The issue he has, and I actually think he threw his printer out his back door. Because the problem with when it changes and it goes into that block, if there's a temperature change, because you essentially have a cold filament, it might only be 10 degrees, but what's going on is it just jammed the heads. So right now, we don't think I'd give it some time, and they're eventually going to get it figured out, but right now, I actually talked to him and I was like, how's your printer going? That was not a really good, that was a pretty graphic conversation. And I went over to his house and his printer was literally in the backyard in pieces. And, oh, he did. And he spent
That's where we go back to the whole thing of
It'd be great to have a 3D printer, but it's even better to have a friend that has a 3D printer.
Exactly. So
you just feed up material and files, and they'll be like,
so support material, I use Cura because I'm lazy. You can actually change the support materials and some of them. Like if you're going to do this helmet, there's as in one piece, you can actually fill that whole thing up with. Like if you print it this way, yeah, I know. Because people like printing it this way. Okay, so because you don't have to mess, it's a lot less prep time. The only problem is that will fill up. You'll use a roll of filament with the support material because it has to support when it goes over.
Basically a grid of
Yeah, it's a
material.
grid.
You'll have to break it or cut it out, but
You
if
can-
you print it upside down,
It's easier.
you'll just need some support material around the outside.
Yeah, you can get away with, like on some of the helmets, are changing your support material starts to build by doing different, like, what is it, dangles, or you get into, like, what is it, like, there's what's the other slicer that you can actually change your support materials?
Simplify 3D.
Simplify 3D, you can actually.
It's not a free software. The stuff that usually come with, like your printers, like Hura, or with my Robos, they came out with their own, which was matter control. But Simplify 3D, you can actually, it breaks it down to like specific tool processes. Like on certain material, like I was trying to figure getting fancy enough that I could print one of those circle panels and make the door have its own a different variance, or not variant, but a rod inside it, printed a different material or a different temperature or different like that. It's a lot of micromanaging, but you can get down to it. You can actually change the support and then have supports on one thing, or supports are 10 degrees cooler than it's supposed to be, or supports are
Yeah, you can narrow it down where you can eliminate supports.
or you can
different spots.
manually go in and add support. A lot of, I think, is Cura doing their tree support thingy?
The last version of Cura locked up my computer so bad. Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
if you start messing with 3D models and 3D software and 3D slicers, and you think you're going to be cool and have them all at one shot,
Ooh.
you best have a really good graphics card.
Yeah.
Or a computer that can process fast, because
So to get back to supports on a helmet, what we're talking about, if you print it this way, you'll only have like a donut here. The issue is you can actually, you get away with, there's ways to get around doing a whole lot of prep work and finishing work after that by doing different temperatures of this, and you just snap the stuff off, do a sanding, and you only have a donut here. I personally, I don't like printing full helmets because that helmet would take 3-4 days to print.
easy.
Easy.
Then you gotta make sure you have consistent power.
Yeah.
If it will make sure you get all the way to where you're going.
Yeah.
Well, they're the bigger print, like his CRs are now like full helmet printers.
Yeah, I can print this all. I don't choose to do that because
I'm afraid of failure.
exactly. And he did.
Live on the edge,
Yeah.
man. Literally, I'm outside making sure there's no clouds in the sky.
Yeah, I bought so with as many printers I have 2 UPSs, the uninterruptible power supplies. Because dude, the AC or the electricity in my area at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the summertime, and we have brownouts like for 5 minutes, or the transformer on the pole.
This guy's one question.
Oh, okay, all right.
So let's say you want to do like split in half, how would you go about attaching the
You can do, I've done on some of these parts, like his triangles are 2 pieces, but there's modeled little pinholes, so you can use filament, yeah, fill it, or actually I use 3 millimeter, because you don't talk metric, 3 millimeter brass rod, so they can go in that way. So there's some people that take this helmet and just basically put little drill holes in it, so you just basically line it up and epoxy it together.
Like little 3D parts that, like when they come together, it just snaps together.
This was all welded together, and it sucks. If you go and you find files you know somebody that is, if you find a file, you know they spent some time with this because they'll be indexing things. And then, like, there's a one I use, it's called, the guy is called Daniel Lilligreen, who does everything from Fallout. His stuff is like putting a Lego stand. I mean, and you put the parts lay there, and
Yeah, there's many different ones, and there's stuff that doesn't like to bond to each other. ABS is a cool thing on certain ways because you can take acetone, just regular acetone, and just go, and it'll make a chemical bond.
Yeah, we transitioned over into what you use to put stuff together. I use either 2-part epoxy, like hobby epoxy, or I use CA glue, cryo, that acid. Yeah, I call it pissed off super glue. You can get it at hobby things with, it's got an accelerator. Do not spray yourself in the face with accelerator. And do not use your shush. Do not do it at your computer table either and knock over the bottle because your keyboard will not come off the table ever again. I'm not going to say how I know that. Yeah, anyways.
The resin printer, you talked briefly about that at the beginning. So is that faster to print?
It's with FDM, because I've been looking at this a lot. FDM, you have a lot more time because you're doing the whole path is by one tool head basically. The SLA or the like laser printers are doing pretty much like that whole layer is done in a second, 30 seconds, half a second, depending on what your exposure time is. So no matter how big your part is, it's always going to be how many layers you have. So it's a little bit different because if you have a small part and the tool head just goes really quick, it's a little faster on that. But if you have a big part, it might take forever. But that will shrink down that part.
Detail on an SLA printer, like if you're really into like gaming figures and stuff, get an SLA printer.
Yeah, and they're coming out pretty cheap.
Oh my goodness.
The only thing with, like I said, the difference between SLA and some of the resin, they don't, like SLA printers do not like having models that are completely closed. Because they'll do the outline, and then you're going to trap all that liquid resin in there, and that resin is way worse than ABS plastic.
Get to know your neighbors really well because my neighbor, I do fiberglass work outside of my house, and I live in a mobile home park, and my neighbors think I have a meth lab in my house. I know because I know the local PE really well because they've been called to my house for random
bombs.
Yeah, well, that's a whole story. I look like the guy from Breaking Bad on my front porch, and I'm sanding a grenade. And I got a corner of my armor, and I look up, and the neighbor walked out, turned around, and walked back in the house, and I'm like, and here comes the local PE.
That's the thing with, like, going back to your SLA printer. Resin right now, the structural properties of resin, depending on what you get, what you're looking at, is a lot more brittle. Like impact to a point where it'll like break. Like it doesn't take impact very much. I was thinking about doing some stuff for him with it. And they said it's great for like detailed parts like minifigures and stuff like that. But it's a tendency to snap.
Okay, so the new thing.
What about resin as a
It might work, but you're gonna have to find out what you're gonna use to mold because
I actually use resin as a mold for silicone because I use platinum pure silicone. So you cannot have a soft mold platinum pure silicone. It's basically skin effects make molding, so you have to have a hard shell, and it works really well. It doesn't react to that resin, but it's typically resin to use soft items that you're gonna peel out.
And she is a huge expert in.
I'll go
I'm not a
there.
huge expert. I made like two
I call, but she really knows. No, she.
I research a lot. I'm a little OCD.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Like any type of thing you're gonna try to get into, if it's resin printing, regular printing, 3D printing, anything,
Do your research.
just look into it. Because you'll know that you're like, yeah, this is not something I want to get into because I'm going to tinker every day to try to figure out why this doesn't work. Or either which way you're going to figure out which type of resin, which type of printer, which type of filament will be what you want to use.
If you want to spend a lot of money on resin, then you're going to get an also I get dental resin, which is a lot stronger. Which you're
Dude,
gonna
what?
need
No,
in
just go
some-
to like Buildings Materials or something.
Oh, yeah, go to
And
Rimmel.
also check out the RPF form. There's so
Don't go to Rimmel.
many.
So is it,
What's wrong with
maybe,
Rimmel?
Because
is
that's
that
too much
resin,
money.
is resin a filament or is it actually?
No, it's a liquid. It's a
Okay,
liquid.
it's a liquid and the lasers, okay.
Yeah, a laser, because they have a
It's a
laser.
two-part liquid.
Yeah, it's a
Sensitive.
photosensitive liquid. They have it as a laser. They have it as a DLP, which is basically a screen of a film that basically shines it up there to cure it. And then I think that's
So
basically.
literally you have a vat that you fill up with resin.
Okay, that's what
And then
that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah, the printer part, your part will actually print upside down. Your printer part is on the top, and then the optical laser, whatever, it prints it out like this. It flashes. So you're working with a vat of resin. Right now, resin printers are cool, and you get they're. So we're gonna get to the bad side of this. You've got the smell. Also, you're looking at what's left over, because what's left over in the tank you can't use. You
You can
can't.
screen it out, but
Oh, you gotta screen it out.
the thing is with that resin stuff too is you don't want to get it on your skin.
No.
You don't want to get it in your hands because any type of lighting will cure it under your skin. So you would actually have
It's
it.
only revenue free, it's not cosmetic.
No, it's not. I have scars.
And it's like they have not made basically non-toxic resin.
Literally, grab
So-
a pair of 5mm mechanics gloves, you will be happy. Because they're split, they're thin, you can still
Yeah.
work them, they got neoprene on one side that protects you, they resist heat, and grab a respirator that's marked, that's
Yeah,
Be safe.
that's marked for particulate chemicals.
Yeah, it's what stage 3 or something. But, so we're almost.
Well, we've been way over your little thing.
Oh, whatever. So, anyway, so, thanks for everybody coming
Question we
out.
can try to take care of for you.
Yeah.
'Cause I feel like we go way
If
over.
not, Brad's at his booth, it's the fire team booth in the gaming room on this wall, and we're with, Sam's down on the floor with the thermal cosplay, and Keith and I are with the Fallout group. Pretty much everything at our booth is probably 3D printed, so he's got one running right now, printer running. Ask questions.
Do you want to see an FDM printer run right now? It's at our booth, like I said. It's got and that's where we got some of it is like at auto levels, so we're not worried about that.
So, all right, we're out of time. Does anybody have any questions?
We can try to go.
Yeah, we can.
No, yes, no.
I think they're gonna run us out.
I don't think so either.
Sam's got a panel in a half hour.
Yeah, in Greenlee, Fallout 4 or more.
Oh, yeah, Fallout 4. I'm going
How do you
to
know that one?
I'm going to that.
Oh, I
Supposed
thought
to be there.
So, yeah, we've been doing this for a while.
We appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, appreciate it.
This is like our second panel that we've done.
Yeah.
So we're trying to we'll figure it out.
It's, once you get hooked, you get hooked to buy a printer, you're done. I mean,
Yeah, one more.
Fair.
Yeah, you go really well. Yeah, so
Sorry, I got other panels and people are like,
Dog.
What materials did you use?
I bought this online. Okay. So it's like